This is why throwing money at business problems doesn't work, according to Sam Altman. So, this is a clip of Sam Altman, co founder and CEO of OpenAI, speaking to a class before his time uh, as CEO and co founder of OpenAI, which he is today. Um, and before he was really as well known as he is now. Um, so Sam today and OpenAI is one of the most influential businesses in the world. They have been at the forefront of AI going mainstream. ChatGPT literally was, kind of the gunshot heard around the world, so to speak, when it came out at the end of 2022. And Sam, in particular, has had a lot of experience before he gained any major notoriety as the CEO of OpenAI. He had a lot of experience because he had multiple startups that he worked on. And then he was also leading Y Combinator before he got involved with OpenAI and co founding it. So, in particular, he talks about execution. Maybe it's one of those cliches that you've heard, you just got to work and be consistent and focused. And, we need to be, oftentimes, we need to be reminded more than we need to be taught, right? Because for most of the people seeing this who are entrepreneurs, who are business owners, chances are that you may have heard similar advice at other times, but things really can just click for us if we hear it in the right way, and coming from maybe a different person who has like a slightly different data set that they've accumulated over their life experience. For me, this in particular has resonated because Sam and I are almost the same age. He might be a year or two older than me. I was actually introduced to Sam Altman. We spoke on the phone back when I had just graduated college. Funny story, the co-founder of Reddit, Alexis Ohanian, actually introduced it through email. And I spoke to Sam briefly on the phone. It was pretty much a forgettable call. I didn't really, Sam wasn't really known like he is now. But obviously, smart, hardworking guy. And I remember before he even gained notoriety too, just um, hearing a quote from Paul Graham, who was an alumnus of the school that I was also lucky to go to and graduate from. Um, he said that if if you had to bet on anyone surviving being stranded on an island, he said he would bet on Sam Altman because he would just essentially beg, borrow, steal, and kill to survive, to make whatever needs to happen. That quote has since been used to describe Sam as sort of maybe a ruthless or untrustworthy in certain ways. And I'm not here to pass judgment in that way. I don't know the guy really. I can only tell you what I've observed, and you know I choose to reserve judgment at this time. Um, but in particular, this resonated with me because us being nearly the same age, but there's a difference in results. Where I've been successful at growing a bootstrap company with no outside investment, which I'm very proud of, to become a company that has earned millions of dollars in revenue. We had our first seven-figure year in 2021 where we grew 936% in 8 months. Quite the ride. Um, and our productized offer just really hit the market and took off like a rocket. Um, and for some of my peers though, who again they're kind of in a different vehicle where they are taking outside investment. It's a little bit like steroids, in my opinion, a lot of the time. But the scale of operation and the scale of impact is something that I really aspire to. So other than the venture capital money, which at the time of this video, at least, I refuse to take outside capital. I want to prove it to myself, not just can we hit $1 million in revenue and become like a multi-million dollar company, but I want to continue to. I want to get back to that place because we are no longer at that place as a company. That's my fault. And so in reflecting on that and saying, okay, like if I look at my peers who are around the same age as me, like Sam Altman, like others that I went to college with, and you don't really know what the reality of anything is either. Like you only know what people tell you on the surface. And part of the purpose of this channel that I'm trying to share with you is like just authentically um, like being open with you about like what is the journey like as we make progress towards our big, hairy, I almost said hoary, our big, hairy, audacious goal of generating $1 million in profit per month as a business. That's the next mountaintop that we are striving for. So we don't just want to get back to being a 7-figure plus company. I want to go far, far beyond that. Um, but I look at entrepreneurs and founders like Sam, like Alex Ramosi, like others, and I say, okay, what are they doing that I have not? Because I don't think it's a difference in competence or intelligence per se, um, but certainly a difference, I think, in terms of learning, where the lesson that I have learned and then failed to retain over time is one of focused execution, consistent, um, committed over time. So, with that as the preface to it, let's actually look at what Sam has to say in his own words. Okay, let me share the screen. And let's go.
This is what takes up, if these other things.
Let's rewind just a little bit. Okay.
Execution is the hard part of a business, right? Because these other things happen pretty quickly. And this is what takes up, if these other things take 6 months, this is what takes the next 9.5 years. It is the relentless waking up every day and just sort of banging your head against the wall until things work. And everyone thinks they can hire someone to do this. Founders always think, well, I'll hire a COO and he or she will manage the operations for the company. And I will get to go off and I'll just think about strategy and meet with investors and go to conferences and it'll be great. Obviously that.
So just to pause it right there for a second, that's a very common observation. Because like as entrepreneurs, what we are doing is fundamentally hard. It is very, very challenging to build a successful business, even just to, you know, 5 figures, 6 figures, 7 figures. Certain things do get easier over time, especially as you accumulate more resources and capital and experience as well. Experience in some ways can be a hindrance, because you can kind of become almost like too wise to the probabilities against you, and you become maybe more risk averse and or less creative, perhaps. Um, but that aside, getting back to what he's saying here, like it's just a common thing because it's hard, because it is mentally and emotionally tough, to be an entrepreneur, to make hard decisions every day, hiring, firing, budgeting, operations, marketing, creative, just like all these little micro judgments. And it's a lot of pressure, especially, and it's a lot of responsibility, because you want to grow the company, you want to maintain profitability, you're looking at your cash flow, you have a responsibility to keep the company not just afloat but sustainable and thriving and growing, because you're responsible for, in many cases, helping to people to feed themselves, to feed their families, to have houses, to have a life, because money is money is the mediator of value that we exchange as a society. And with money, those are the things you can buy. Like you get time off on the weekends for friends and family and yourself, and you use money to purchase things that that sustain your life and make you and the people around you hopefully a little bit happier. And if that money stops, that's because the business doesn't do well. That is your responsibility. And this is what a lot of entrepreneurs kind of get caught in. It's just like the pressure and constantly having to decide, and like, what if it works? What is it? What if it doesn't? So it's coming from a place of fundamentally, it's coming from a place of fear a lot of the time. And this is why, if they can abdicate responsibility, and I've been guilty of this at times too, so I'm not just criticizing here, but it's very tempting to abdicate that responsibility, to say, oh, I'm just going to hire a COO, as Sam gives the example. Or what I've heard often is, oh, let me just hire an agency, let me hire a consultant, let me make one new hire to the team. And then people are surprised when things don't work out, especially if the problem that an agency or a person is being hired to solve is, you know, has actually not been solved, or at least not solved well or completely yet, that person will only perform typically, depending on level of competence and experience and a variety of other factors. Usually, they'll perform at a percentage of the person who maybe originally solved the problem, and who cares more than the founder or owner of the company, who's going to be who knows more about the market and the product or service that's being offered, who knows more about how just the overall context and data set that's required to know, okay, in terms of operations, we need to do these things every day in order for the business to just exist. Um, and if that problem has not been thoroughly solved to the point where it's easy or relatively easy over a period of time to teach someone else, I mean, let's take an even simpler example of agencies. So I have heard, and maybe you have heard too, and maybe this has been your experience as well. And I'm going to challenge you here because, you know, you may have been walking around saying the same thing too, where it's like, oh, I hired an agency once, or I hired a freelancer, or I hired a consultant, and I got burned. And it's like, okay, but did you really? Did you actually get burned? Or perhaps you had unreasonable expectations where you could, um, for example, I'm going to pay $5 on Fiverr or some small amount of money over a small amount of time, and I'm going to expect the person to, set up my ads and maybe my entire funnel, and it's going to get results immediately. It's like over what, like for major corporations with millions of dollars of resources, like for instance, in Alex Hormozy's book, $100 million Leads, he tells the story of how there was cold email, right? And they couldn't figure out how to get it to work. And he says they essentially kind of got lucky where they had this consultant that he knew who had done it before for multiple other companies. So he came into Alex's business, and he kind of had to like take a little bit of a calculated risk. And I think he worked on on a performance basis, like where, and the stakes were very clear. You have 3 months to start to get this working, and then we're going to make a decision. And if it's not working well by the end of 3 months, or at least on a serious track where there's real growth and results, we're going to pull the plug. So you have 100% ownership. And if it doesn't work, well, we'll shake hands and part ways. And it's, but that's it. So he was well incentivized to get it to work. And this was someone who had the experience, had the competence, had the experience and the data set necessary to do it. But even then, they got to month 3, and it was only just starting to work. And then by month 6, there was still a discussion. It was only like still a small fraction of the company's revenue. And internally, Alex's team was pushing back on him, like saying, I think you should pull the plug on this. It's producing, yeah, a little bit, but it's just not enough. It took, I believe, only by like month 9 or 10. So for a multi-million-dollar company that's already well established, right, that is funding this over time, it took 9 to 10 months to get this to actually like really get it really dialed in to where it could work. Because it's very easy to see these case studies out here to say, okay, like what is the result that we're getting? And like, oh, I grew my leads 133% in 5 minutes by changing the color of the button. It's like those examples are actually few and far between. And oftentimes there's more context there that may not apply to your business, because the path to success is usually one that has to be more custom for your business in terms of whatever the goal is that you want to achieve. You can copy and paste, but oftentimes you just won't get the same result because there's so many other variables, and things also have accelerated in terms of the age of AI as well, where it's so easy and it's like so commonplace for people to just fucking copy each other. Um, and so I don't recommend that. I recommend like learning kind of the general principles and then figuring out how to like custom apply it. But getting back to the point here is that, for people and businesses who say that they were burned, it's like, okay, even if you spent 5 or 10,000 or more dollars with an agency, and that agency was working for, um, you know, 2-3 months, and they actually created deliverables, and they actually did, what the plan was that they laid out. And yeah, I mean, sometimes the timeline slip, that's pretty common, but, you know, did Did they burn you? Or maybe the expectations of success while you abdicated responsibility for being involved in the process in the first place. Maybe that was also a big part of the problem, expectations and the abdication. Because what I've seen with our most successful clients at Growbo, and if you don't know, with Growbo, we are not an agency, we are a productized tech enabled service. So what we offer to other businesses is a marketing fulfillment team on demand. So basically, for less than the cost of one full-time virtual assistant, you can get access to an entire team to delegate a variety of tasks across 13 different skill sets for any like marketing deliverable or task that you want to get done. Um, and in providing this productized service to our clients, our best clients, what they do is they won't have like this expectation that like, oh my god, like I'm going to delegate this and you're going to make me rich. It's like, no, they have an expectation around turnaround time, which is part of what we advertise on our pricing page. They have an expectation that we're going to do quality checks and things like this. They do not. The best clients do not have an expectation that we're going to make them rich. Certainly not overnight, because the best clients know that they're going to get the best result by communicating, by telling us like what are their preferences in terms of like design, and how they prefer to communicate and do the messaging in terms of their marketing campaigns and content, things like this. But also they are aware and self-aware enough that they have the deepest knowledge and far deeper knowledge compared to us. And we're going to get back to the video in just a second here, I promise. They have far deeper knowledge than us on their product or service. And if they abdicate at a minimum, just being like including themselves in the processing and giving that extra, 3 to 5% feedback or polish on whatever it is we're delivering, that's often what makes the difference between whatever marketing, creative collateral campaign, whatever it is that we're creating, launching funnel. That often makes the difference because they in those cases they're not abdicating that responsibility. They're approaching it in a collaborative fashion. And yes, we are doing 95 to 97% of the work, but it's that gap that often will close the difference because of their hands-on firsthand knowledge that they understand the market better. And so therefore it is those clients that are our best clients because they get the best results. And it is just a genuine pleasure to do the work for them. So and those are the clients too who, when they go to an agency, for example, they make a hire, they're not doing that abdication thing, because a lot of time they've oftentimes they've wrestled with the problem, they figured it out on their own, and then they went and they tried to hire someone for it only after that point. But let's finish hearing what Sam had to say without further interruption, probably.
That fails 100% of the time. Value gets created over compounding execution for years and years and years, and it never gets easier. But this is what you're signing up for as a founder. Very little of the value gets created by the idea. If you just think about the time frame, most of the value gets created by this part. And so, people say that most of what being a founder is about is not being in love with creating a product, but being in love with creating a company. And I think there's a lot of truth in that. There's a big shift after those first three categories all start working, where you shift from the great idea and the great product to great execution. And this is a shift that a lot of founders fail to make. Execution is the hard part of
Let's just watch that beginning part one more time.
the business, right? Because these other things happen pretty quickly. And this is what takes up, if these other things take 6 months, this is what takes the next 9.5 years. It is the relentless waking up every day and just sort of banging your head against the wall until things work. And everyone thinks they can hire someone to do this. Founders always think, well, I'll hire a COO and he or she will manage the operations for the company. And I will get to go off and I'll just think about strategy and meet with investors and go to conferences and it'll be great. Obviously that fails 100% of the time. Value gets created over compounding execution for years and years and years. And it never gets easier. But this is what you're signing up for as a founder. Very little of the value gets created by the idea. If you just think about the time frame, most of the value gets created by this part. And so, people say that most of what being a founder is about is not being in love with creating a product, but being in love with creating a company.
Most of the value gets created over years and years and years. No truer words. No truer words. You just have to wrestle with things. You need to accept that it's hard. If it was easy, other people would do it. And I would encourage you to reframe the idea of what it means for something to be difficult. Now, you ideally you don't. There are two sides of this coin, right? It is going to be hard work. At the same time, you don't have to hate it. Okay, um, being focused and executing consistently over a period of time, that consistency over a period of time, that is what has tripped me up. And I think it's what honestly like what trips a lot of people up. Because like it's hard enough just to get to a place of focus, like, okay, I'm gonna do this one campaign, I'm gonna do it for 3 days, or I'm gonna make a podcast episode, once per week. Um, but in reality, it's like it's so hard to it feels so hard, and that is the hardest thing. It's just to sustain that consistency day after day after day. Um, because it is hard to put yourself out there, to make content consistently, to wake up every day, to walk down to your home office, or to drive to your rented office, whatever it is, and just to do the same thing over and over and over again, um, because it can feel boring at times. It can feel repetitive at times. It can and it will, but sometimes that's the opportunity, because when it starts to feel repetitive, perhaps that is the time when you can actually start to delegate, rather than abdicate. So I encourage you to meditate on these takeaways. And I also encourage you to meditate on that like and subscribe button. If you would like to get more content like this, if you found this valuable, please do like and subscribe. Please consider leaving a comment. I would love to hear from you. What did you get from this video? What nugget of information was most valuable? Is there anything that maybe you disagree with that Sam said or that I was saying? I would love to hear it. And getting back to that point too of, let's actually go back to full screen here. To wrap up, getting back to that point of, um, there's a two-sided coin. Like it takes years of being consistent to really build something of measurable value, to have impact at a enormous scale. Um, which is my goal, and maybe that is or isn't your goal. But if you want to, even if it's just building a local business, or you just want to build it to 6 7 figures, and be able to hand it to your kids, or sell it and then retire, or something like this, it still takes a lot of work. Um, and some business owners have said, it can take the same amount of work, for small businesses as for large businesses in some ways. But I think one of the greatest growth hacks is to figure out how to love the work that you're doing. Because when you love the work, it doesn't feel like work. It feels like play. And that level of energy and joy can sustain you for years. Wouldn't it be nice to wake up every day and feel like it's Christmas? So please like and subscribe. I will see you in the comments, and let me know what you think.